So you can't really do a balanced schedule. I mean, we know that. Geographically, it really doesn't work. And economic, no, it doesn't work. But is there a way to weight victories? Now, we're getting pretty complex here, but can you weight victories based upon the quality of the opposition? And again, I'll cite the example. 4 teams in a division that, or let's say 5. Let's say 4 of the 5 teams in a division are really good, really strong. They play each other a lot. They beat the snot out of each other.
Sounds like the Central to me.
Okay? Another division, 4 of the 5 teams are really weak. Somebody's going to emerge from that, and they're probably not worthy because a significant amount of their competition has come from other teams in their division.
Correct.
So in order to really assess the quality of a performance over the course of 82 games, should you just go by wins and losses? Is there a way to quantify the quality of the victory?
Let's go. We're going to hire the Russian judge. I mean, so you're going to hire.
I don't have the answer to this.
No, I know, but
I'm just raising.
I think
I
it
know
would
it's
just be
complicated.
straight your record against competition, like they do for the NCAA tournament, where they have that.
the selection committee.
And they know
You got a
by the
committee.
base schedule, so it would all be computerized. And if it wouldn't be something where somebody sits and says that was a quality win. I'm talking about it would actually be by record.
Wow.
No, but I'm saying it's complicated.
Aren't we losing sight of what the end game is? What is the goal? Is the goal to get the right team to win in our estimation, or is the goal to have more entertaining playoffs where you get good competition even from the outset?
Well, it would appear you have relatively evenly balanced matchups in the East in both. I can't argue this, but Washington, Pittsburgh. Interesting. Yeah. You don't know who's going to win. Islanders, Tampa. A level below those other 2, perhaps, but very interesting. But then what happens, as Brad said, what happens when you get to the next round? And you got Washington against the Islanders.
Yes.
I mean, is that a more compelling matchup than what we have right now?
No, you got
No.
it down. Exactly.
No, and
You want to build, and there's always been that way.
if there's an upset, there's an upset. You can't do anything about it. But ultimately, what you want, you say, okay, if this team is this good, and if that team over there is this good, they will meet for the championship.
Mm-hmm.
Things can happen in the middle, but they should meet the championship. And by virtue of their performance during the regular season, they should have the advantage of playing the weakest competition as they go along.
So if that's the end game, you can forget about divisions, you can forget about etc.
Yeah.
You got the weakest teams against the strongest. In the hope that you'll have the odd upset, you'll have the odd team that goes through where they came from. But at the end, mostly you'll have the really good teams duking it out for each other.
It would seem to me that the biggest flaw in this system is the seeding of a divisional team as a top 3 team.
I agree with you. I mean, I
Like
think
if
that's
you're
the
the
problem.
if that team, if there's a team wins a division and they have the 8th best record in the conference, then they should be seeded 8th, shouldn't they?
I totally agree. I remember at the league office us having these discussions in the previous alignment, where, if you recall, in the old system there were 3 divisions in each conference, and they gave the 3 first spots in each conference to the division winners, no matter how many points they had. So you had the number 3 team that could have had, in theory, 80 points, 2 games under 500. And then they would still have home ice against the team that was at 90 points. It made no sense. This system that they've created is a little closer to that. But what in many ways they're trying to do is create the regional rivalries, and also trying to make sure that by the time the Stanley Cup in its championship series is that you're covering a little more of the continent. So that you're not going to have a Philadelphia, Washington Stanley Cup final, and all you're talking about is people on Interstate 95.
Or Washington, Pittsburgh.
Or
It would be a
Washington.
great fun.
It would have been a great fun, but you know what?
Wait a second. A few years ago, we had a Kansas City St. Louis
Exactly.
World Series. What's wrong with that?
I'll tell you what, if you look
I mean,
if you recall the year the Mets versus the Yankees World Series, ratings were at that point all-time low, because it became so regionalized. It became so focused in the tri-state area that people outside of that area didn't have much interest in it. You need to try
so
to
we're
create.
going to manipulate the system on the basis of one thing and one thing only, economics.
Economics and
No, that's it. Because these are businesses.
they are businesses.
They aren't sports anymore, they're businesses.
But I don't really see much. If you're trying to grow your industry, you have to try to find a way to create a halo effect of who will watch your sport. I mean, one of the great things about the National Hockey League in the last 6
It's all
years.
theory though, John. You know, I just don't think it's.
Well, you just want to win. You want to win.
What
You
about
want the
the
best team.
What about the economics of for the owners though, John, in terms of, I know for the league and you get that, don't want the regional thing, but what about whoever loses this series, Pittsburgh or Washington, and feel like, okay, well, if you want to win a championship, doesn't matter when you get knocked out, you got to beat everybody, but what about the team that says, we would have had one more round of games, if the two best teams could play in the conference, we're missing out on minimum 3
You don't think that the
home
Dallas
games and
Stars, you don't think the Dallas Stars and the St. Louis Blues are going to have that argument?
Yeah.
When they're the 1 and 2 seeds in the Western Conference right now, and
Playing
they're,
each other
one of
in
them's
the second round.
one of them's going to be
Those
eliminated.
you feel like if it's economics, and that has to come into play as well, because what is it, how many millions now a night in a game?
Oh,
They've
you
changed.
know, two and a half to
Yeah.
4,
Yeah.
depending on your
So
city.
there, 3 more games or minimum 2 a year.
Well, the national hockey, let's look at the biggest markets in the United States. I mean, the objective here, according to, well, that's not your plan, but the way you've laid it out, is let's get the best teams, let's get let's not even worry about whether the best teams, let's just make sure that geographically we kind of cover the planet as best we
This
can.
is your plan.
Let's
Well,
call
let me
it
tell you-
let's call it a halo effect.
Well,
The halo.
let's talk about the markets that you now don't have.
Ju-
Los Angeles,
but
gone.
that's
Chicago,
that's 1 year.
gone.
That's an
Boston,
anomaly.
gone. Arguably New York, gone.
That's an anomaly.
I know you have one.
I will. You can cite 2016. I'll cite the last 6, where it's been Kings, Blackhawks. A great deal of that time. When that halo effect of what the Blackhawks have done in the Midwest, where there's 50 million people that live within 300 miles of Chicago, and the game has grown leaps and bounds.
John, help me. On Bob's premise, with which I agree, but it's business. We know this is business. And why shouldn't it be? That's what it is. What is better for business? Is it better for business to have Los Angeles, New York in the final, or have the 2 best teams, say Washington and Pittsburgh, in the final? What makes for better and more profitable things?
Well, I think it's obvious. The bigger cities, more people have a chance of watching.
Well, I really didn't know.
I mean, if we were trying to do this, it's different for hockey than it is the other 3 major sports simply because of the border. The border plays a huge issue for hockey. If there was ever a time that either the Toronto Maple Leafs or the Montreal Canadiens fell into that and they played a major U.S. market, I mean, it would be unbelievable for this country and for the game and the perception of the game of hockey.
So 2 lesser teams, but in better geographical regions.
In theory.
And the Vancouver Rangers still the highest rated Stanley Cup final in Canada anyway, 94.
Well, I think Boston, Vancouver.
Vancouver.
I think Boston, Vancouver, 2011 usurped that because and the rating system changed,
Yeah.
so they were able to be a little more particular. But
There's an example.
There's a great
Canadian
example.
city and a big
U.S. city,
an original 6 U.S.
and then that was the perfect storm for the National Hockey League. It worked out great. I don't think there's anything wrong with a little bit of regionalization with East versus West. And because it's not as if you can take a snapshot of 1 year and say, oh, that's the way it always is. It's not a snapshot. It's over a period of time. And again, you can take this year and say, well, the Rangers are out, so New York's gone, Chicago's out, the Kings are out, Anaheim's out, so Southern California doesn't care. But over the last 6 years, the last 5 years at least, all those teams were actively involved, heavily involved, and hockey was in great shape. I also think hockey's in pretty good shape right now because the games were. That game last night was fun to watch. Anaheim Nashville was Game 7 was a hell of a game.
Yeah,
Chicago,
it's a game 7.
but
It's all game 7 as well.
but that goes back to the competitive side of what we're talking about. You can have the two best teams, and then you get a team that gets hot.
You
and you
know,
lose
it's the
the
same. It's the same theory, Shannon, as soccer. Like if you have one goal games all the